Landon Lake hadn't worn a disguise in years, yet that morning he meticulously adjusted the coarse gray beard and crooked glasses in his rearview mirror until he saw someone else staring back. The face reflected at him was older, weary, far from the polished image that graced magazine covers and business journals. That was the point. No one would recognize him like this, and anonymity was exactly what he needed. He wasn't just visiting a cafe, he was stepping into a question that had haunted him for weeks. The cafe on the corner of 3rd and Mason was one of 7 in the chain he'd purchased 5 years ago from a sweet, aging couple who had poured their hearts into it. Back then it had charm, it had soul. Customers knew the baristas by name, and every drink came with a smile that felt genuine. But lately something had shifted. The warmth had drained out like a leaky pipe no one bothered to fix. Reviews had turned lukewarm. Cold coffee, long waits, robotic service. On the surface, nothing seemed damning, but in his gut, Landon felt it. Something was rotting from within. His district manager had insisted everything was running smoothly. Landon no longer believed him. As he crossed the street, the city buzzed around him, fast-paced, indifferent. The neighborhood had grown, modernized. So had his company. But somewhere along the way he'd lost touch. He hadn't met the local staff in years. That was a mistake he was here to fix. Inside, the cafe was tidy, almost sterile. It looked fine, technically, but something vital was missing. The music barely whispered. No laughter danced in the air. No casual banter between customers and baristas. Just muted silence, like a room holding its breath. A young woman behind the counter smiled as he approached. Her name tag read Amber. Her eyes sparkled with effort, not joy. "Good morning. What can I get started for you?" she asked, bright but rehearsed. "Just a black coffee," he replied. "Medium, you got it. Name for the order?" He hesitated. "Lou?" with an S. As she turned away, the back door slammed open. A man stormed out. Thick build, tight black polo, presence like a thundercloud. "Amber, how many damn times do I have to tell you to speed it up?" His voice lashed the air. Amber froze. "Yes, sorry, I was just..." "Don't give me excuses. You're lucky I even kept you on the schedule this week." Landon's chest tightened. The man's tone wasn't managerial, it was menacing. He moved away from the counter, pretending to inspect the pastry case, but his focus sharpened. "Rick, that had to be the manager." Rick lowered his voice, but not enough. "Mess up again, and I'll cut your hours so bad you'll be begging for shifts." Amber didn't respond. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed the cup on the counter. "Medium black for Louis," she whispered. Landon took the cup. "Thanks," he said softly, more to her than to the coffee. He moved to a corner table and sat down, untouched drink in hand. His heart nodded. He hadn't come to find trouble, he just wanted to observe. But now that he'd seen this, heard this, he couldn't unsee it. And more importantly, he couldn't ignore it. He stayed for over an hour. Rick didn't yell constantly, but when he did, it echoed. Landon watched as the man snapped at a barista named Tasha for asking about her shift. He mocked a teenager working the back sink when he requested gloves for dish duty. But Amber bore the worst of it. She moved like she was trying not to crack. Her smile never reached her eyes. By 10:30, Landon had seen enough. His hands curled around the paper cup like it might anchor him. He rose and approached the counter. "Could I speak to Rick?" he asked, voice even. Amber looked startled, but nodded. "Sure, I'll get him." Rick reappeared moments later, wiping his hands on a towel, already wearing the impatient frown of a man expecting a petty complaint. "Something wrong with your coffee?" Landon looked him dead in the eye. "I'd like to talk to you outside." Rick narrowed his eyes. "Do I know you?" No, but you will. Outside, the summer air felt thicker somehow. Landon reached up, pulled off the glasses, then peeled away the fake beard. The transformation was instant. Rick's face drained of color. "You're Landon Lake," he stammered. "I own this place." Silence. Landon's voice was low but sharp. "I heard what you said to Amber, and to everyone else. That's not leadership. That's intimidation. That's fear. And fear doesn't build anything. It only destroys. You think this makes you strong? It doesn't. It makes you weak." Rick said nothing. For the first time that morning, he seemed to understand the weight of consequence. But Landon wasn't done. This wasn't just about Rick. It was about everything that allowed Rick to thrive. Neglect, distance, blind trust. Landon had walked away from the day-to-day, assuming the company's soul would take care of itself. But a business, like a heart, can only keep beating if someone listens for its rhythm. And this cafe? It was flatlining. Rick opened his mouth, but no words came. His jaw clenched, then relaxed. Defeated. "You're off the floor." "Effective immediately," Landon said, his voice like cold steel. "I'll be back tomorrow. Don't come in." Without waiting for a response, Landon turned on his heel and stepped back inside the cafe. The weight of what he'd just done hadn't fully sunk in, but he knew one thing: it was long overdue. Amber was at the counter, wiping it down with trembling hands. Her shoulders stiffened as he approached. "Amber," he said gently. She looked up, confused. "I'm not Lewis," he said, offering a small, genuine smile. "I'm Landon. I own this cafe." Her eyes widened, shock and realization flooding in. Her mouth opened slightly, but the words got caught somewhere between relief and disbelief. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," he continued. "What happened this morning, it's not acceptable. It ends today." Tears glistened in her eyes, but she nodded, lips trembling. "Thank you," she whispered. And for the first time that morning, Landon finally brought the coffee cup to his lips. It was cold now, bitter, lifeless, but he didn't care. He had work to do. The next morning, just after dawn, Landon returned. No disguise, no hesitation. He stood in the parking lot for a moment, watching through the fogged glass as the first lights blinked on. The air was thick with coastal mist, damp against his coat. A slow breath escaped him as he saw Amber moving behind the counter. Her hair was tied back, her movements focused. She hadn't noticed him yet. At 5:58, just before they unlocked the front doors, he stepped inside. The bell above the entrance gave a soft chime that echoed in the early quiet. 3 pairs of eyes turned toward him. Amber froze, then quickly looked down, unsure of what his presence meant now. At the espresso machine, a young man squinted, trying to place the face. A teenager near the pastry rack stopped mid-step, frozen with a tray of fresh croissants. "Morning," Landon said, his tone calm but warm. "Didn't mean to startle anyone. I'm just here to observe today. You all keep doing what you're doing." Amber offered a small nod and returned to organizing the pastry case. The others exchanged glances but remained silent. By 7 a.m., the line was 6 customers deep. The team worked like gears in a quiet machine. Efficient but robotic, conversations were brief, smiles felt cautious. When a customer complimented the muffins, Amber smiled for half a second, murmured a thank you, and returned to the register like a wind-up doll reset by habit. Landon stood near the counter, cradling a fresh, hot cup of lighter roast. The warmth of it grounded him as he watched every interaction with careful attention. He saw how the team anticipated problems before they happened, how they moved in quiet synchronization, how they stole glances toward the hallway, even though Rick was gone. His presence still haunted them. At 8:15, a woman in a dark denim apron stepped in through the side door. She looked mid-30s, hair tucked neatly under a bandana, eyes calm but watchful. She spoke briefly with Amber, who nodded and gestured toward Landon. The woman walked over. "You're Mr. Lake?" she asked, tone professional but not cold. "I am," he replied. "You must be Clara." "I manage Midtown and Eastwood," she explained. "District sent me to cover here until we get things sorted. I appreciate you stepping in." Clara nodded. "No problem. I've pulled doubles before. Midtown's steady. My assistant's covering it for now." She glanced toward the team. "They're good kids. They've just been walking on eggshells." "I can see that," Landon said. "I need to ask you something off the record." Her gaze didn't waver. "Of course. Did you ever hear complaints about Rick? Anything come across your desk?" Clara paused, thoughtful. "Nothing official, just patterns, some red flags. Weird labor logs, transfers that didn't last more than a few weeks. But no HR complaints, no formal write-ups. He kept things just under the radar." Landon nodded slowly. It was exactly the kind of silence that let toxicity fester. "I want to talk to every employee here, one-on-one, 10 maybe 15 minutes each. I'll rotate coverage so we're not short." Clara didn't hesitate. "Let's do it." She moved back to the counter and gently tapped Amber on the shoulder. A few minutes later they sat in the quiet of the back hallway, away from the hum of the cafe. Amber sat upright but looked uneasy, hands folded tightly. "You're not in trouble," Landon assured her. "I just want to understand what's been happening here." She exhaled slowly. "I don't know where to start." "But start anywhere," he said. "It wasn't always like this," she began. "I've been here 9 months. At first it was great. Busy, sure, but doable. Then the old assistant manager left, and Rick changed. Started cutting hours, yelling, threatening pay cuts. He played favorites. If you didn't push back, you were fine. If you spoke up, you got buried. Did you ever report him?" "I tried once," she said, voice quiet. "Sent an email to the district inbox. Never heard back. After that, I stopped. I needed the hours." Landon's jaw clenched. "Why didn't you leave?" "I wanted to, but I've got rent, school, and I liked it here before. I liked the customers. The way it used to feel." He leaned back, expression softening. "You're not imagining any of this. I saw it. I heard it. I should have been here sooner." Amber looked down, voice catching. "He told people they couldn't sit on breaks. Said it looked lazy. He made one girl cry in front of customers. She quit that night." "What was her name?" "Janelle. She was here for maybe 3 months. He said she talked too much, like a child. Said customers wouldn't take her seriously." Landon didn't write anything down. He didn't need to. Every word, every detail was already etched into his memory. "I appreciate you being honest," he said gently. "You did nothing wrong. You held this place together. That matters." Amber blinked, and a tear slipped down her cheek. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, she didn't feel invisible. Amber blinked fast, absorbing his words like sunlight after days of storm. She nodded, firm but shaken, and returned to the floor with a different posture. Still cautious, but no longer small. Landon didn't stop there. One by one, he spoke with every staff member. Lewis, the teenager who barely spoke above a whisper, told him how Rick deliberately assigned him the worst shifts, late nights followed by early mornings. He wasn't even allowed to clock in a few minutes early to help set up, even when asked to. It wasn't about policy, it was about control. Then came Tasha, the barista with the earrings that glinted like armor. She recounted how Rick told her they were too much for a cafe, as if personality was something to be hidden. But what shook Landon more was what came next. Tasha had once tried to help a Spanish-speaking customer, only to be told by Rick that speaking Spanish was unprofessional. That stopped Landon cold, his fists clenched at his sides. That wasn't just mismanagement, that was prejudice, and it had no place in anything he built. By mid-morning, Landon stepped outside and dialed the district HR rep directly. "I want every scheduling log, payroll note, and exit survey from this location in the last year," he said, voice like thunder in a storm. "I want names, I want patterns, and I want that inbox checked for missed messages, all of them." The voice on the other end stumbled over a nervous, "Yes, sir," right away. Back inside, Clara flagged him down. "We've got a problem," she said quietly, eyes alert. "What is it?" "There's a delivery guy out back. Says Rick placed a double order yesterday. No invoice, no system entry, and no approval." "Where is it?" "In the alley. Crates of milk, syrups, frozen stock. No paperwork." They moved through the narrow hallway to the rear door. A young man stood beside a hand truck, shifting nervously. "You the owner?" he asked. "Look, I don't want any trouble. Rick called me directly. Said he didn't want to use the normal system. Said he'd pay cash. I've got the texts right here." He held up his phone. Landon scanned the message. It was unmistakable. Rick had deliberately bypassed every standard protocol, ordering inventory off the books. "Leave the crates," Landon said. "We'll reconcile it. This isn't on you." The delivery guy nodded and quickly unloaded before disappearing down the alley. Clara watched him go. Inventory skimming? Maybe. Or worse. I'm not jumping to conclusions, but something's off. We'll run the numbers. Back inside, the lunch crowd began to swell, but the mood had shifted. Ember now called out drink names with clear, calm confidence. Lewis actually laughed at a customer's joke. The healing wasn't complete, but it had begun. Something real had taken root. Landon stayed back, observing. But beneath the flow of lattes and chatter, he was calculating. Not just what had gone wrong, but what had failed in the very system he had built. Rick wasn't just a bad seed. He'd been allowed to grow, unchecked, protected by layers of assumptions and a process that asked too few questions. That part was on Landon. He waited until the crowd thinned before calling Ember to the counter. "You're off early today," he said softly. "Clara's got you covered." Her brows drew together. "Am I in trouble?" "No." He smiled. "I want you to meet me at the office tomorrow. We're starting fresh. I need your help designing the new training manual." She stared at him, stunned. "Me? You've seen what works and what doesn't. That matters more than any title." As Amber stepped away to gather her things, Landon turned to Clara. "We're not just fixing this store," he said. "We're fixing all of them. This doesn't happen again." Clara gave a slow nod. "I'll help however I can." He didn't take his eyes off the counter. The cafe didn't feel fixed. It felt honest. The hum of machines and quiet laughter didn't ring out like celebration. It rang like stability. By Thursday morning, Landon had already been at the cafe for nearly an hour before the first customer walked in. He hadn't slept much. 2 days of reviewing data, interviewing former staff, and piecing together timelines had crystallized something darker than he expected. Unfiled complaints, unlogged cash transactions, dozens of resignations, most within 60 days of starting. None of it had triggered the company's red flags. The systems weren't broken. They were blind. Data was scattered across departments, never once connected. Until now. Clara arrived just after 6:30 IE Mint, a clipboard under her arm, phone in hand. She didn't say a word as she passed. She didn't need to. They both knew today was about follow-through. Amber arrived next, dressed simply in jeans and a charcoal sweater. She carried a canvas tote and a new steadiness. But when she saw Tasha fumbling with the till, her smile faded. "Lois isn't here," she asked. "His grandmother's in the hospital." Amber said softly, "He called Clara last night." Landon nodded, scanning the floor. "We'll cover it. It's not ideal, but two of us can hold it together." Amber hesitated. "I can stay. We can push the office visit." "No," Landon said firmly. "That's not optional. What you're doing matters. Clara and I can handle this." She didn't argue, just nodded and grabbed her coat. By the time she left, 4 tables were full. The morning rush was on. Clara manned the register. Landon stepped behind the espresso machine, pulling shots with a rhythm he hadn't touched in years. But muscle memory kicked in. His hands moved before his thoughts caught up. "Large oat milk latte, extra hot," Clara called. He passed the drink across the counter. The woman who took it smiled, then paused. "You're new?" He smiled, just stepping in. "You're faster than the last guy," she said, and walked off. Clara smirked. "That's the 3rd person who said something like that this week." Landon didn't reply. He didn't have to. Because this was what a cafe was supposed to be. And he'd make sure it never became anything less again. By 9:30, the morning rush had thinned to a quiet trickle. Landon stepped aside to clean the prep area, wiping down the cold bar with slow, deliberate motions. As he rinsed out a pitcher, Clara approached, holding her phone with a look that said this wasn't just a routine update. "Got something you want to see?" she said, voice tight. Landon dried his hands, took the phone, and looked at the screen. It was a screenshot Amber had forwarded from an old group chat. Former employees, long gone but not forgotten. One message stood out like a flare in the dark. Jared, a dishwasher who'd quit the previous fall, had posted a photo of a milk crate, clearly expired, with a sticky note stuck to the top. "Use first. Don't tell." Beneath it, Jared had typed, "Rick said if we tossed it, it was coming out of our checks." Landon read it twice, then again. The rage came slow, quiet, but suffocating. "When was this?" he asked. "October," Clark replied. "Midtown had supplier delays that month. Guess where the overflow ended up?" He didn't speak. He just turned and walked straight into the back storage room, yanked open the industrial fridge, and scanned every item inside. Everything looked clean, properly labeled, dated. But that wasn't the point. The point was how long it had been allowed to happen, how long the rot had gone unnoticed beneath the surface. He pulled out his phone. "Full audit," he said when the line picked up. "Every cafe, every manager. Start with food safety logs. I want eyes on every temperature log, every disposal record, every supplier invoice. Anything older than 6 months." "Pull it." "Yes, sir," came the reply. He hung up and turned to Clara. "This isn't just a cleanup, it's a culture reset." "Do you think it's like this everywhere?" she asked quietly. "No," he said, "but it could be. And that's enough." For the next hour they worked in silence, Claire at the register, Landon behind the espresso machine. Neither said much, but the weight of what they were uncovering was thick in the air. Just after 11, a man in a crisp white shirt and navy slacks stepped through the door and made a direct line to the back. "Who's that?" Clara asked, already tensing. "Ryan. Corporate compliance." Her brow lifted. "You move fast." Landon didn't answer. He followed Brian into the storage room, where the man was already flipping through temperature logs pinned to the wall. "Start here," Landon instructed, "then go to Eastwood by 4. I want every record Rick ever signed off on reviewed." Back on the floor, a new customer approached the counter. Late 50s, gray beard, stiff posture, eyes scanning the space like a man stepping into enemy territory. He leaned toward Clara. "Rick still managed this place?" She glanced at Landon, then shook her head. "Not anymore." The man gave a curt nod. "Good. He banned me once. All I did was ask if the restroom was accessible. I've got a mobility issue, he knew that." Landon walked over. "When was this?" "January," the man said. "Didn't make a scene, just left. Never came back." "I'm the owner," Landon said gently. "I'm sorry that happened." "It won't again." The man stared for a beat, surprised, then gave a quiet nod and took a seat by the window. Clara leaned closer. "That's the third person who said something like that this week." Landon said nothing. He just stared out the window, jaw tight. By noon, Amber returned from the office. Her shoulders were squared, her eyes clear, different from the girl who had once flinched at her own name being called. "How'd it go?" Clara asked. Amber smiled faintly. "We've started drafting the new onboarding modules. Landon wants it to be values-based. Less rules, more culture, real examples." Clara looked impressed. "That's smart." Amber pulled out a folder. "I added a section on what to do if you see something wrong, even if it's a manager, and direct contact info for oversight, not just the district lead." Clara glanced from the folder to Landon. "That wasn't there before." "It is now," he said firmly. Suddenly Tasha stepped out from the back, holding a wrinkled sheet of paper. "Hey," she said cautiously, "found this in the old schedule binder. Thought you'd want to see it." She handed it over. It was a folded schedule, but the back side was covered in handwritten notes. In Rick's distinct scrawl. Amber. Cut to. Weekends only. Tasha. No more doubles. Lewis monitor breaks. Next to each name, a single letter. AL. On the back, a list of preferred names. All white-sounding, all former employees. Clara leaned in. He was targeting them. Landon folded the paper with deliberate care. "Get HR on the line, now." He disappeared into the office. 10 minutes later he returned, face calm but unreadable. "HR is drafting formal letters. Rick won't be eligible for rehire anywhere in the industry, and we're notifying the labor board. This crosses into civil violation territory." Amber's breath hitched. "You're reporting him?" "Yes, and we'll offer support statements for any employee who wants to file a complaint." Tasha blinked. "No one's ever done that before." Landon looked at both of them. "Then it's about time someone did." He turned to Clara. "Start reworking the hiring process. No more silent promotions. No more top-down decisions. From now on, no one moves up without a peer review. I want team voices involved." Clara nodded, her tone steady. "Understood." The rest of the shift passed slowly, not tense but reflective. Customers came and went, lattes were poured, counters wiped. The silence between the staff wasn't filled with fear anymore. It was filled with something deeper. Processing. Healing. As the afternoon lull arrived, Landon stepped outside and stood beneath the faded awning. The street buzzed with life, ordinary and distant. Amber joined him a minute later. She stood beside him, arms crossed, her voice barely above the breeze. "I didn't think anything would ever change," she said. He didn't take his eyes off the street. Neither did I, until I saw it for myself. She looked at him. "You going to keep doing this? Going undercover?" "Not like this," he replied. "But I'm not staying behind a desk anymore. I built this place to be different. I forgot what that meant." Amber didn't reply. She didn't need to. "You still want to manage one of these someday?" he asked. She lifted her chin. "I do." "Good," he said. Because starting next week, you'll shadow Clara, help train the new hires. We're building this foundation right from the ground up." She exhaled slowly, the weight lifting from her shoulders. For the first time, she believed him. And more importantly, she believed in herself. Amber didn't cry. Her eyes didn't widen. She didn't freeze in disbelief. She just nodded, quietly, firmly, like she'd already known deep down that this was coming. The buzz of the cafe continued behind her, not flawless, not euphoric, but steady, alive, and Landon knew with a certainty he hadn't felt in a long time. This time, it wasn't slipping away. The following Monday, sunlight spilled softly through the cafe windows as Landon stepped through the door. The morning hum of steam wands and coffee grinders filled the space like a familiar heartbeat. At the counter, Clara stood with her clipboard, listening as Amber gestured toward a laminated prep chart taped near the espresso station. Landon stayed back, watching the exchange like a proud parent quietly observing a child take their first confident steps. Amber spotted him first. "Morning," she said, with an ease that wasn't forced. She handed him a sheet. "Prep guide for new hires. Clara suggested we post it where it's always visible, so nobody's guessing." He scanned it, color-coded, time-stamped, labeled by station. Everything thought through. "Looks solid," he said. "We tested it all weekend," Clara added, made a few tweaks after the Saturday rush. Behind the counter, the floor was dry, spotless, organized, syrup bottles lined up like soldiers, cups stacked in perfect orientation, energy flowing not from fear, but from shared ownership. "Where's Tasha?" Landon asked. "At Eastwood," Clara replied. "She's training 2 new hires. We rotated her early. She's been opening 5 days straight. Didn't want her to burn out." "Is smart." A customer approached, and Amber stepped aside as Clara took the order. Landon noted how the customer, an elderly woman with a walker, was greeted at eye level and gently offered a seat while her drink was being made. It was a small thing, but deliberate, and it said everything. He walked toward the hallway where a folding table held new hire packets and a sign-in sheet. Above it, a cork board displayed the new reporting protocol Amber had helped build. The language was simple, direct. No corporate jargon, no confusion, just clarity. Then came footsteps. Lewis appeared from the back, drying his hands on a towel. "Deliveries are checked in," he said. "Moved the dairy to the far fridge to free up the walk-in." "Who signed off?" "I did," Lewis answered. Clara confirmed. "Everything's fresh. Expirations are next week or later." Landon nodded. "How's your grandmother?" "She's stable," Lewis said, eyes bright with both fatigue and gratitude. "Still in the hospital, but better. Thanks for switching my shift." "You kept this place going through the worst," Landon said. "We've got your back now." Lewis gave a quiet nod and returned to the kitchen. Landon crossed the room and took a seat at a side table, where he could see the full scope of the cafe. Every few minutes he scribbled notes, observing how orders were taken, how the staff moved, how customers responded. At one point, a delivery driver dropped his coffee. Amber was there in seconds, offering a towel and a fresh drink before he could even bend down. She didn't ask permission, she just acted. At noon, the cafe closed for 1 hour. A handwritten sign on the front door read, "Team break reopens at 1:00 p.m. It was Landon's idea. Just a temporary measure to allow staff a moment to breathe as they transitioned into this new version of themselves. Inside, chairs were scooted back and boxed lunches handed out. Clara placed a large carafe of iced tea on the center table. Amber passed around feedback cards. "This is optional," she told the group. "But we're using these to shape the next round of changes. Everything will be read." Landon stood at the front, not to give a speech, but because people looked at him now with questions, with hope. "I know this all came fast," he said, voice even. and I know not everyone trusts it yet. That's okay. But this isn't a patch. It's a reset." He paused, met their eyes. "If you see something that doesn't align with what we're building, say something. And if you don't feel safe doing that, then we've failed again." No applause followed, just nods. Thoughtful silence. The kind that meant people were truly listening. After the break, Amber approached Clara. "One more thing," she said, voice hushed. "I got an email from jail. She heard what happened. Said she's willing to speak to HR. Forward it to Landon," Clara said instantly. "And tell her we'll support whatever she needs." At 2:15, a man in a navy vest and company badge arrived. Early 30s, upright, no wasted movement, compliance investigator. He asked to speak with the staff privately. Landon led him to the back office and handed over everything. Rick's handwritten notes, scheduling logs, payroll records, staff turnover data. "I want this part closed," Landon said. "No more dragging it out." It will be," the investigator replied. By 4 o'clock, the cafe was back at full capacity. A steady rhythm of orders, chatter, movement. Amber was training a new walk-in hire on pastry wrapping. "Keep the wrap tight, not crimped," she said. "It's about making it look like someone cared." The girl, probably no older than 20, nodded, then tried it herself. Amber corrected her gently, then stepped back. Near the window, Clara leaned toward Landon. "She's ready," she said. "You want to make it official?" "Not yet," Landon replied. "Let her keep building. She'll know when it's time." Clara turned as a customer needed help with a loyalty card issue. Outside, the sky had begun to shift. That golden glow of late afternoon spilled across the cafe floor. Landon walked toward the back room where the new uniforms were stacked. Simple, practical, no flash. Just a patch stitched neatly on the front. "You matter here." He picked one up and set it aside. "For Amber?" That evening, as they closed, there were no grand speeches, just soft goodbyes, exchanged glances, and a mutual calm. Clara locked the front door, and Landon pulled her aside. "There's an opening at Northside," he said. "It's rough, poor retention, weak leadership." "What are you thinking?" Clara asked. "I want you to go in. Stay for 60 days. Not to fix it from above, but to find someone inside who can." Clara tilted her head, smiled knowingly. "Like Amber." "Exactly like Amber." She thought for a moment, then nodded. "I'll leave someone strong here. Keep this on track." They stood in silence for a beat. "You ever think about how close we came to losing this whole team?" she asked. "I try not to," Landon said, "but I'll never forget it." As the door locked and the alarm beeped behind them, Amber passed by, earbuds in, tote bag over her shoulder. She gave a brief wave without slowing down. Landon watched her disappear into the soft evening light. Then he turned to Clara. "We didn't save a cafe," he said. "We saved the people inside it." She didn't respond. She didn't have to. They walked away together, leaving behind a building no longer weighed down by silence, but lifted by something far stronger. A team rebuilt, a culture restored, a foundation finally steady.